Why did Joe Biden go for Kamala Harris? What does she bring to the ticket? What's the dynamic like between them?
Well, he's already promised to put a woman on the ticket, and he's kept that promise. In the current environment in the United States with the Black Lives Matters protests, there was increasing pressure for him to put a woman of color on the ticket as well. But really, this does says an awful lot about Joe Biden and the Biden campaign. Number one, he's clearly a very different personality than President Trump. He's willing to put somebody on the ticket who had been a critic of his in the early debates. It shows that he's kind of got a bigger picture and a little different level of maturity in terms of recognizing that. She's not only the first woman of African-American descent to be on a ticket for vice president, but also the first Asian American. So brings a lot of potential for different constituencies. And as she showed during her remarks today, together with the candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden, she's a former prosecutor, a former attorney general, and likely to be the candidate that takes the fight directly to the Trump campaign. And so, and if nothing else, it kind of shakes up the narrative about this being a choice between two elderly white men. Kamala Harris's choice, particularly given the age of Vice President Joe Biden, really sets this up as a choice about the future direction of the United States, a different demographic, a different age category.
And when we look at that election, Gordon, the polls do seem to be consistently putting Biden ahead of Trump, even in some traditionally strong Republican states. But how much weight should we actually give those polls? How trustworthy are they, if at all?
Well, myself included, I think most analysts were burned by the experience in 2016. And so you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody making a firm prediction based on the polls today. The important thing to recognize is that the polls are largely unchanged, and they have been for the better part of the last 3 years. That's both good and bad. On the good side of it, it shows that President Trump remains largely about 15 percentage points underwater. In other words, his disapproval ratings of around 55% have largely been unchanged for the last 3 years, and his approval rating, historic lows of around 40%, are largely unchanged. The bad side of that is that if you look back to January of this year, before the coronavirus pandemic, which has taken now about 170,000 American lives, before the collapse of the economy, before the civil unrest, President Trump's approval rating was almost exactly the same, right around 40%. So he's got a very firm base, and that means that it is far too soon to declare this election over. And I think what you're going to see is a hard-fought next 83 days between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
And Gordon, is there actually a chance the US election could be delayed? We know that New Zealand is currently considering this at the moment due to the pandemic. It seems Donald Trump would be pretty keen to see that happen.
Clearly, he would like that. He does not have the ability to do that. In contrast to New Zealand, the date of the U.S. election is actually set in the United States Congress. This is not something the president could do by fiat. And despite the fact that Republicans in Congress tend to roll over for almost anything that the president wants, when he tweeted out the suggestion about 2 weeks ago about the delay or potential delay of the election itself, he got absolutely no support from Republicans in Congress. And so I think that's a step too far. The election will take place 83 days from today.